I'm Rob Licuria, senior editor at Gold Derby, here with Oscar nominee Jess Gonchor, production designer on Noah Baumbach's latest, highly anticipated White Noise. Jess, what were your primary inspirations for the period itself? Because this film is bonkers in so many ways. It's beautiful to look at, but I assume you work from a baseline of the 80s suburbia before filtering that look through this off-kilter, the highly saturated contrast turned up to like 10. Talk me through that process.
Well, I found it to be well, first of all, I went to college in the middle 80s. So for me, it was like, I had a good understanding. I mean, rarely as designers, and maybe I think these guys will agree with me, you rarely get a chance to work on something that you feel like you have a grasp on the visuals of it. We have to become experts in things in 12, 14 weeks that we have no right being an expert on. So I felt like I was very well versed and sort of grounded in what a small liberal arts school in somewhere America would be like. So I drew a lot from that inspiration, and then I felt like it could be embellished quite a bit. So I mean, like the number one thing in the 80s is like either Michael Jackson's Beat It or like the Rubik's Cube. So I started to look at that Rubik's Cube and in this movie, the nucleus, the centerpiece of the movie is this supermarket. And I started to think of the Rubik's Cube as all the little squares as product in the supermarket. And as the movie went on and some people were trying to solve the puzzle, all of the color sort of amortized its way throughout the movie in the college campus, in the home, on the evacuation scenes, and all of those things. And I tried to just, I don't know, that was one thing I was trying to make a conscious effort of doing that with like supermarket product and branding and just all the boldness of what I remember and what I still know the 80s was like. So
Yeah,
that's where it sort of came from.
that makes sense. The branding is off the charts, not only in the supermarket, but in the home, even in the German teacher's little apartment. It's like there were little Easter eggs everywhere. I wanted to freeze frame just so I could kind of go back into my nostalgia kaleidoscope. It was pretty impressive. The supermarket itself is the most gargantuan thing I've ever seen. It's like a Costco times 10. And one of the characters says, everything is fine if the supermarket's okay, something like that. And I just thought, yes, that's so true. It's so true. It's our peace. It's our church. I'm curious though, when Noah's talking you through the concept, where do you go to in your mind, and then what was the hardest part about making that supermarket set? Because it's mind blowing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, I mean, the hardest part was finding a place because it took a while. It was probably like the longest set I've ever worked on because of just having to, a full functioning big supermarket, find a place to do it, make all the product, print all the labels, wrap all the cans, get things cleared, paint the
Yeah.
whole thing and things like that. So I mean, it was like it was a math. I think maybe like I mean, I built some towns in my time and some things, but this time was like just sort of a very large undertaking. And also, again, drawing from experience, I remember when my parents dropped me off in upstate New York to school, they dropped me off at this supermarket called Wegmans,
Yeah.
which is now popular around, but they had I mean, you could get a fishing license in there. You could get, Cracker Jacks, you could get Oreos. I mean, and it was like, and it was like this. I was just like, holy shit. I was like, this is like very colorful. And I could tell that the whole town went to this place. And that's where they sort of energized themselves and got their supplies and what they needed and saw the latest things going on and brought that out into the world. So it's sort of like I drew on that. And then with a lot of, research of, and again, the colors of the Rubik's Cube, I used them, there was a lot of, I tried to use a lot of this. The movie is separated between, like a lot of small college towns are like a small town supported by a big city, like a steel town.
Yeah.
So all the Iron City, which was the Big Brother city, I try to use a lot of like all primary colors. And in the liberal arts town, I went with like a lot of secondary and pastel colors, just to try to separate those two things.
Yeah.
Like I went to school near Rochester, New York, which is next to, very close to Buffalo's big steel mill. And they actually we used to go to Buffalo and work with like shipbuilders and bridge builders on little, metal sculptures and things, and bring them back to the campus, like, working in big medium like that. So I know. So I try to separate those two things in color worlds like that.
Yeah. And then in the college on the hill, which is the college that you referred to earlier in this interview, I was blown away by the audacity of, having architraves and windowsills adorned by rainbows, and the space is really kaleidoscopic. You've got these beautiful lamps that match this poster, and to me, it felt very intentional, and also as chaotic as Dom DeLillo's novel, and then of course Noah's adaptation. What were you really going for, particularly in that space where Adam Driver's character and Don Cheadle's character are regaling this double story to their students? It's a really, really great scene.
Well, I was going for like like an experimental theater, like a forum, almost like the forum, and I sort of took on some of those shapes and added the '80s color to them, because it was like it was a debate. It was sort of almost like Hamilton in a way, like a rap, you know what I mean, like somebody came into the light and told their story, and they faded back and they went back. So I remember, I just wanted to have this forum of it. Right away. I was, we were looking at lecture halls, and I said, we should do this in the round. We should do this in make this a round, lecture hall with risers, and a sort of an informal thing. So somebody could step up and do their thing and step back, and sort of just have this, this debate forum for the whole thing. So I was like, going with that, and just wanted to make just a great space for them to be able to have a theater on the round, and make it a lecture hall, and bring some color into it, and again amortize that whole color that would have started in the supermarket and seeped its way through the film.
Yeah, and I think that, before the film gets a little darker later on, after the airborne toxic event, the home itself I found really compelling. There's this pastel autumnal wallpaper, wood staircases. It's very cluttered. There's these garish yellows and reds from the 80s. There's these really gruesomely kind of weird green vinyl chairs. What was the brief there? Was it just throw as much in there as you can to give us this extrasensory experience when we first see this chaotic household?
Well, again, he's Adam Driver's a college professor, and I'm sure after your tenure, you probably, the job may come along with an old Victorian house, and wherever this thing's supposed to be, in the Midwest, upstate New York, whatever. We shot Midwest, and both his character and Babette, they're on their third or fourth marriages, so I figured they had a lot of stuff that they would bring, in a very eclectic sort of feel to it. So when we built all 3 floors of that house on stage, and not on top of each other, we didn't have a place high enough, so we sort of cheated and split it up. But I figured it would just be a lot of baggage in that house that they would have brought from other marriages and other things. And plus, the dialogue in the film, there's constant dialogue going on. People need to, pick up things, walk behind something, walk under something, open something. So there needed to be a lot of, of clutter. It's interesting, when you read a script, when you read a story, and when you start to make a movie, you always have your own pace in your mind of what the pace of the movie is. And when I saw the movie, the scenes in the houses, the pacing was much faster than I ever thought it would be. And it really worked great. I was excited to see that. And I was happy that we had all of the things and all of the areas to go to for them, all the family of 6 to improvise with.
Yeah, and it works perfectly. It's a very chaotic scene, just like the novel. Thank you for your time today. We're going to bring you back shortly for our group chat.